Oi, oi, it's your boy, Slacky J, coming at you on Monday, the 14th of June. Fresh off UFC 263, I believe. Adesanya versus Marvin Vettori. And we got some fights to talk about. I was away this weekend, so I caught up on the interesting stuff from the UFC card, a little bit of Rizin, a little bit of Bellator, but we're mainly going to be focusing on the fights people care about from the UFC. So we'll jump right into it. Israel Adesanya versus Marvin Vettori. One of the most frustrating performances of the weekend for me. Because Marvin Vettori, his corner kept calling for the double jab. Rafael Cordeiro was very obviously aware that the double jab had got him back into the first fight. And they were using the double jab right. They were getting Izzy to the fence constantly. If you watch the fight, any round, he hits the fence and levels his feet out and has to move from side to side 3 or 4 times. That's what you want. The problem was that their game plan for using that was garbage. Really just didn't... Vettori wasn't doing anything except occasionally swinging for the head once they got there. And Cordeiro was going, no, just level change. So then he'd do the big, telegraphed level change and try and get a double leg on the fence, where Izzy's really good at defending takedowns. He's terrific at propping himself up on the fence. Just baffling. And it's one of those ones where you think, it's going to set back people trying to fight Israel Adesanya because he had success moving him to the fence and cutting off his retreat and then didn't do the things that you would need to do to take advantage of that. And you're worried that people are going to watch that and go, oh no, just give up on trying to get him to the fence. Give up on trying to double jab. Not zero body shots, but I counted 0 body shots watching it. And then I went to Fight Metric or UFC Stats or whatever it's called now. They had it as 8 thrown, 7 landed. And low kicks, 7 thrown, 6 landed. Similar stats to anyone who ever low kicked against Demetrius Johnson. The legs were there and the stats showed that, but dudes were just completely fixated on trying to knock him out. And it helps when you're dealing with someone very elusive. We all know, everyone who knows a good amount about fighting knows that if you've got an elusive opponent, try and find the things that are more readily there. The head is the hardest thing to hit against any good fighter because they're moving it, and it can go up and down, it can go back and forward, it can go left and right. You've got 3-dimensional movement of your head. Even if you're backed up against the fence, you have that to a degree. But when you're fighting an elusive fighter and they're good at, scoring their points, landing their blows, picking up takedowns, doing whatever they're doing, regardless of whether they're TJ Dillashaw, Dominic Cruz, Demetrius Johnson, Israel Adesanya, if it's hard to get a hold of them, you get more fixated on trying to make the most of every connection, which is exactly the opposite of what you want. But you see it in everyone. It's this fixation on headhunting because you're like, well, if I'm going to turn this fight around, I've got to knock him out when I hit him. When really, if you're targeting the legs and the body, you will bring yourself into the fight because the headshots will open up. Because the way you defend body shots and low kicks is different to the way that you sway away from punches or duck under punches or move your head to get out of the way of punches. But Marvin was just headhunting in this fight. It was double up the jab, get to the fence, stare at him for a little bit, and then throw a 1-2, and then he'd slip and move out the side door. Go back to Anderson Silva on the fence. He had the same success because dudes were just obsessed with punching him in the head. Then you watch him against Michael Bisping, and he did nothing off the fence against Michael Bisping. Well, actually, he did land a good front kick late in the 4th, was it? But for most of that fight, every time he goes to the fence, Michael Bisping comes in, level changes, and hits the body. Because if you're really good at moving your head, you're not, your body doesn't do that. You can't move your trunk out of the way like you can your head. It can't go side to side. It can't duck under things. And the same is true of your legs. If you level out your stance, flatten out your stance so that you can move side to side, your legs are there. It's harder to check. And when you're moving side to side, your legs are occupied in the movement. So we've always said with Izzy, as we did with Demetrius Johnson, move him to the fence, make him circle and kick the trailing leg. Said it about Dom Cruz too. And then Henry Cejudo actually did it, had amazing success, finished the fight. Or didn't, depending on how boozy and smoky you thought Keith Peterson was. So yes, very disappointing. It was just jabbing to the fence and then level change for crappy double leg or throw left hand at the head. And Marvin, for all his look, is not a big banger. And the really frustrating thing is that he has incredible durability. So he was just taking 2 fights with Izzy. He's taken everything Izzy can give him and just kept moving forward. So the ring craft was working really well for him. He wasn't ever really in danger. a lot of people like avoid kicking the legs and hitting the body against good strikers because one, you're banking on the knockout, but two, you're worried about opening yourself up for. It's like this trade-off. You think like, if I'm opening myself up to get knocked out with a headshot, I better be throwing a knockout headshot. I don't want to give up a knockout headshot for a good body shot. But Vettori is crazy durable, so he could have done it. But at no point was Rafael Cordeiro calling for it. He was never calling for him to vary his strikes. He was never calling for him to kick the body, kick the legs, punch the body. He was just calling for this double jabbing back and double leg, and then being like, "You're down 4 rounds," or whatever it was. Now, Izzy, to his credit, obviously looked fantastic. This is the sort of framing we get when we're talking about, someone who's done so well for so long. It tends to become about like, why didn't his opponent do this? We know that Izzy is good with this, this, and this. Why was he fixated on that? But we got to give praise to Izzy for that performance too, because again, just flawless for the most part. Did get to the fence a lot, which is not where he likes to be. He likes to be out in the open and moving around. And drawing people in on lines and things. But his feints and his mix-ups were mix-ups. That's a fighting game phrase, rather. You know what I mean? His feints and his changes between like body kicks, head kicks, low kicks, jabs, straights, changing of stances. When you're losing these fights to Israel Adesanya and you're getting outstruck, how is it not easy to look at that and go, yes, he is killing me with his amazing variety. I should also vary up my shot selection. But no, like the more you are in the hole, the more you are outclassed, the more it becomes like, I've got to knock this guy out. Even if, like Marvin Vettori, you've like never knocked anyone out. Some cool moments on the ground. Marvin Vettori got his back in the second round, I think it was, because Izzy tried to like bridge and roll out of half guard. That's something that's coming back. You see Izzy do that quite a bit. I think he did it to Gastelum. The bridge and roll from half guard. Mainly sort of like an old school defense because that was back when like half guard wasn't really a guard. Half guard was like halfway to past, but you've still got something. So if you watch like Bas Rutten's old tapes, there are like a load of bridging sweeps from flattened half guard. But flattened half guard is basically past. When we say half guard now, a lot of the time we're talking about knee shield half guard, butterfly half guard, things with something between you and the opponent to stop them smushing you. But Adesanya uses like bridges from sort of a flattened half guard really well and goes to his hands and knees off it, off to his wrestler's base, and then uses the stand up. So it's kind of like what Kelvin Gastelum does, but with a cool bridge sweep attempt first. Unfortunately, he ended up giving up his back in the second round on this one. But, very quickly got out of danger. Vettori was never never really threatening him. It was weird because like he won every round, Adesanya, on the cards. I thought maybe one you could have given Vettori, where he got the takedown off the low kick. And I felt like he was, most of the fight he was controlling where it was. It was just that he was, basically just controlling how fast he got punched and kicked. But I felt like the first round was probably Marvin's best. A lot of people felt like he should have got the second round based on the back take, but I don't think he did anything with the back take. He wasn't even really threatening the neck. But yes, this is why, I'm very frustrated with Marvin, but the reason I'm frustrated with him is that I've always called him a meat and potatoes fighter. He can do the few basic things really well. And those are the sort of fighters that you can say, okay, yeah, just, change it up, go to the body a bit. You can throw a left straight to the head, you can throw a left straight to the body. It's not like you're taking some guy with a really gimmicky skill set and asking him to fight a different fight. You're asking a guy who has the existing tools to slightly change what he's doing. And that's the sort of guy who should be able to come into this fight and make a more competitive effort of it based on what he does rather than who he is or what he can do. Frustrating fight. Good defense from, as in good title defense from Israel Adesanya. I suppose Rob's next, which would be interesting. Yes. So then your co-main event was Brandon Moreno versus Davison Figueiredo, a rematch of their first spectacular brawl. And it's interesting because everyone sort of agreed that Brandon Moreno didn't deserve the draw, in that it was a very good, close, competitive fight, and it was a foul and a point deduction that got him the draw. So you're sort of like, oh, is the rematch deserved? But I think most people were also cool with the rematch because it was such a good competitive first fight. Came out in this one, looked fantastic. Obviously, Mexican lad, trains down in Mexico. I don't know how big MMA is in Mexico at the moment. You got Alexa Grasso, you had Kane back in the day, you had Yair Rodriguez, or he might come back. but you always got the sense that it hadn't really caught on there, kind of like China, where it's like there's this huge population of people who could be really good at this. All these combat sports athletes who could cross over or just change career very young and do really well, but it just hadn't happened yet. But I'm thinking like Brandon Moreno probably not going to struggle to get good boxing coaches down in Mexico. And his boxing looked really good. I thought his boxing looked good in the first one, but he didn't seem capable of hurting Figueiredo as readily as Figueiredo was hurting him. And what I think played a big part here was that, if you're getting ready to fight Figueiredo, you're going, what a crazy man, obviously big loaded up swings and stuff. But once you've been in there once with him, it's probably a lot easier to read what he's doing and a lot less stressful. Moreno's confidence in this one on the feet was really noticeable. It came out and he opened with a jab, body jab, left hook, right straight. Just opened up with a 4-punch combination with 3 off the lead hand, off the bat. No worries, mate. And he basically paralyzed Figueiredo for most of the first round, just working with volume. He'd dip as if to jab to the body and come up with the left hook to the head. He zapped him with a jab as Figueiredo was loading up a left hook and sent him to his knee, basically. It was one of those great ones where the guy is loading up a left hook and he's throwing so much of his weight into it that the moment you ding him and get out of the way, he throws himself onto his hands and knees. Not like, oh my God, look at Brandon Moreno's powerful jab, but like just catching him with good straight punches as this guy's opening up and swinging. And Figueiredo, like he's always been just nuts, but you saw him do the step-up knees with the massive telegraph where he gets punched in the face and just sort of no-sells it. You saw him go for elbows. He went for his up elbow, which he loves. And as he did it, Brandon Moreno slipped to the outside of the elbow and threw his own left elbow downwards across him. It was absolutely gorgeous, and nobody's commenting on it, but it was the coolest thing I've seen in weeks. Slipped an elbow, countered with an elbow at the same time. Just gorgeous. Then Figueiredo was doing this thing like he was playing Steve on Tekken. I've been playing a lot of Tekken, sorry. But like, he did a really exaggerated back lead and then tried to swing a left hook coming forwards. Yeah, it was really interesting. But the grappling was good fun. Deiveson Figueiredo has gone from strength to strength in his own grappling because Brandon Moreno was always known as a great grappler, and Figueiredo was like a banger with competent grappling. But you saw that like flyweight staple, or certainly the UFC flyweight division staple, of just shoot in, body lock, shuck pass to the back, jump on the back. And it's so prevalent in that weight class. I mean, Moreno's great at it. Pantoja does it a bit. Small Yoel Romero, what's his name? Juicia Formiga, that's the one. They're all at it. Just shoot, shuck, back, jump. I mean, he did it a couple of times here. I think Figueiredo managed to spin around and get him back into guard first time. Figueiredo, even from his guard, you see how fucking strong he is. He's got double overhooks from butterfly guard. He tries to sweep him with double overhooks. Brandon Moreno bases out, and Figueiredo just cranks the overhook and stands up. Like with no underhook, just like, yeah, cool, and backs himself onto the fence, starts working from there. Pretty dope. But yes, second round, Moreno shucks his way to the back, jumps on, and gets him dead to rights, gets the body triangle, and Figueiredo couldn't get away in time. And after the fight, like, it was, Brandon Moreno is such a goofy dude anyway. Like, he's goofy looking, but he's also a sort of a goofy personality. It was really nice to see him just like realize, oh fuck, I'm actually the world champion. I'm the best in the world in this division, allegedly. I'm still like, Kyoji Horiguchi needs to come back and smash all these lads. But also, I thought it was incredibly classy from Deiveson Figueiredo, because they'd had some words after the first fight. The usual like, he doesn't deserve the rematch, blah blah blah. And it was a heated rivalry. And then he came like at the moment he was done feeling sorry for himself, and he'd let Brandon Moreno have a little celebrate. He went over and said, "Well done." And then after they announced the decision, he picks Brandon Moreno up on his shoulders to like show him to the crowd while he's crying. And then that's where I was like, oh, are we getting into cunt Hogan here? Randy Savage wins the Rumble or War Games or whatever it was, but Hogan stays in the ring and celebrates with him. But no, literally the moment Joe Rogan comes over, Deiveson Figueiredo gets out of there. He's like, nope, let this man celebrate with his family and Joe Rogan. I thought it was very, very classy from the world's toughest sushi chef and yak owner and hairstylist, I think. Honestly, if you did a third match, I'd be like, dope. What else is going on in that division? Don't know. But I mean, that division is a little bit messy at the moment. It's sort of everyone's more on even footing since the retirement of Henry Cejudo and the departure of DJ and the loss of Koji Horiguchi. I mean, Koji Horiguchi only had a couple of big wins in that division. The Ali Bagutinov one is like his big one, but come on, get Henry Cejudo back. And I don't think they ever will, because basically he said, I will come back for money. He's not closed the door at all. And they're just like, no one really cares. Which is a real shame, because he was one of the most talented fighters we've ever had. Anyway, the one you probably want to hear me go off on is Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz. I was really, to be honest, I was pleased with how well this stacked up with our pre-fight one, where I was just saying, what a thankless fight. Because either you're going to get a cut stoppage because you've got the most elbow-centric fighter in MMA taking on a guy with a ton of scar tissue who's lost on cuts before and everyone's been furious about it. Or Leon Edwards is going to get caught late because he slows down. And he did slow down. I mean, the fifth round, he opened fast, but he did clearly slow down. It's very strange because I was wondering who asked for the 5 rounds before this fight. I didn't wonder enough to check, but I was wondering. Because Leon Edwards, for a guy who controls fights and goes to decisions, he really does slow down late. It's something we've noticed recently, like the Cerrone one, the Gunnar Nelson one. I can't remember if he did against RDA, but he's always just looked worse in the late rounds, even when he was back fighting in 3-rounders. So there was always that possibility of Nate Diaz making him look bad. And it's just a very thankless fight. I feel like the UFC felt like they were doing him a huge favor here, but no, they clearly weren't. I mean, most of the fight, 24 minutes out of 25, was Leon Edwards just beating the brakes off Nate Diaz for all the reasons you'd expect. The fact that Nate Diaz is a southpaw whose answer to low kicks is to be southpaw and just hope that he never meets another southpaw. For all that. Conor being like, he checks kicks now. He's evolved. He checked 1 kick in this fight, and it was in the 4th round. and it did hurt Edwards because he was like, oh, fuck, he picked his leg up. And then in the 5th round, he came forward with that short lead leg, light lead leg stance, trying to hop in. But he went to it so late. He just took kick after kick after kick in the leg, and he changed stance and walk around a bit, but never really dealt with it at all. And just so just to differentiate what's happening here versus the calf kick meta, the current low kicking meta is to do with guys stepping into jab. They blade their stance as they step into box, and you counter kick them. What's happening to Nate Diaz and what happened to Nick Diaz when he was fighting is that they already stand side on, and you just kick them for free. You don't have to wait for them to move. The kick is there, and they won't do anything about it. So the low kick was free for the entire fight. Decent counters he was hit him with as he was trying to step forward, just circling off because Nate Diaz can only move on straight lines. And then the clinch work was good too. He'd get the underhooks and he'd shuck to the back, and it really did just look like I had massive flashbacks to Rory McDonald versus Nate Diaz, where you were going, oh yeah, this is the one where we realize Nate Diaz is probably too small to be competing with these big welterweights. And Leon Edwards, you don't notice it as much, but he's a big welterweight. If you saw him against Bilal Muhammad, he's big. So he'd shuck his way to the back, and Nate Diaz would look for the Sakuraba Kimura, and Leon Edwards would lean into him and then do a little outside trip to put him to his back and end up in half guard. And then we passed guard or Diaz turtled. Diaz would look for the Sakuraba Kimura again, and this breaks my heart because I love the Sakuraba Kimura. It's my favorite move in real life as me. But Edwards was doing something that Marcelo Garcia did. He was rolling with Keenan Cornelius, and Keenan did a commentary of the roll afterwards. And he was like, I've never seen anyone do this before, and it killed my Sakuraba turtle Kimura. And it's just, when you're behind someone like that and they're trying to Kimura you from the turtle, you just put your knee on the back of their elbow and push it off. And once you realize it's there, you're like, oh shit, I've built my whole life around this Sakuraba Kimura. Or I did, at least. Elbows honestly didn't land as many as I thought he would, because he wasn't clinching as proactively as I thought he would. What Edwards does really well is duck in to smother underneath the opponent's punches. They start to back up. He keeps a hand behind the head and he elbows straight to the hand. He doesn't even need to look. Landed a couple of those in this one. There was a really gnarly one that they showed on the replay. But yeah, I mean, he cuts open everyone he fights. So I was expecting lots of cuts here, and there were lots of cuts here, but it wasn't quite as bad as I was expecting. But yeah, I mean, cut him to ribbons. Couple of nice spinning elbows actually off the fence. Really nice move if you like pushing the guy to the fence, because you post your head, free your arms, and then you spin. And they think like, oh, I'm this close to getting out, because you've lost your underhooks and your control, and then you whack him upside the head. Something Alexander Volkanovski used to do loads until he started fighting better fighters. But then in the 5th round, he comes out ready for Diaz to feint at him immediately and counters him with a good 1-2. Then he does that beautiful step through dump. Once Diaz started picking up his leg, he'd do the step through and cut kick the back leg. And it also works just standing, because he's very bladed and side on. So he was able to just step through and kick the back leg out. And it's good when Nate Diaz gives you a fist bump, because that man, like the Diaz brothers, do not touch gloves during fights. They hate that. And he got up and was like, nice, glove touched him. But he did that at the start of the 5th round again. And then, he just slowed down, and Nate caught him with a little slap to left straight. The slap to left straight, or the slap to right straight, rather, if you're an orthodox fighter. I feel people look at the Stockton slap as like a massively disrespectful thing that they're just doing for disrespect. But watch an Igor Vovchanchyn fight. Like, especially bare knuckle, it works really well. But you can't really hit someone effectively with a straight arm left hook unless you turn your hand all the way over so the back of your knuckles are connecting. And even then, it's very weak. Whereas you can, in a very straight arm swing, slap someone across the face and they'll feel it. The slap to right straight is an amazing move to sneak your right straight down the inside. And it's also just great for bare knuckle stuff too. If you watch Igor Vovchanchyn in those like Ukrainian Mega Man tournaments or whatever they were called, he does it all the time. Big left swinging slap, like the Ottoman slap, and then a right straight afterwards. Also, no load up. You don't have to square your shoulders. You just flick your hand out, and hopefully the guy moves his arm out to block it, and you just shoot down the inside. But stuns him, points at him, misses his chance. It was just the most Diaz thing ever. I have with me the greatest take on this fight. It was tweeted to me, and then I had to go to Reddit and find the original one and congratulate the dude. But dramatic reading time. Everyone is so pissed because Nate didn't rush in for the kill, but in Nate's mind, he won the fight that moment because Leon was rocked, and Nate would pick him apart from that point on, or Leon would shoot for a takedown, and Nate would choke him out just like Conor. I think Nate just looks at fights as a fight, not a sport with judges, which is fair enough. Take the second fight with Conor, for instance. He's spelling Conor with both ends, just so you know, every time. It was fairly even. Conor pieced him up and won the decision. But at the end of the fight, Nate was on top of Conor, punching him. That fight goes another minute. Nate probably takes Conor out as well for the second time. That's why Nate doesn't think he lost the second Conor fight, because if it wasn't a round-by-round fight and just a straight-up fight, he wins. The point I'm trying to make is you could look at the fight as a round-by-round contest, or you could imagine the UFC rules were first one to quit or get knocked out / chocked out loses however many rounds it takes. If that's the rules, then Nate doesn't lose the fight because he was winning at the end. Thank you, mate. That's the worst take I've ever heard. Oh, God. The Diaz brothers, like, if they lose by a stoppage and they weren't dead, they're like, no, you should have let me keep going. But if they lose a decision and they rocked the guy once, they're like, oh, no, we won because, had that been on the streets, he'd be dead. The best part is, like, Nick Diaz against George St. Pierre. There was all this, like, if they fought under Pride rules, Nick would kill him. If they fought under street rules, Nick would kill him. If they boxed, Nick would kill him. So he got boxed up, then he got taken down, and he went to Turtle and just hung out there because George couldn't knee him in the head. Diaz Brothers fandom is the funniest thing in the world. I really enjoyed Nate's showing. I thought, even though he got absolutely lumped up, I thought he did well to come through at the end. And I will always admire his ability to take punishment. But that cult around them is just the funniest group of mouth breathers in the world. Except possibly JMMA fans, but we're gonna get to them in a minute. But, I think everyone is far too fixated on Nate Diaz landing one good punch. He got lumped up for 24 minutes, absolutely dominated, had no success until Leon Edwards got tired and stood still. Does, however, hurt Leon Edwards' chance of getting a title shot. They're now talking about doing Colby again. Colby, who has only beaten Tyron Woodley since then. Tyron Woodley, who was already on 5 or 10 round losing streak, whatever. And that was the fight he was supposed to have at that London card, which they then cancelled, and then they said to Leon, get to Heathrow within the hour. And he was like, I'm in Birmingham, because no one knows how geography works at the UFC brass, apparently. But yes, I mean, that's a real sliding doors moment. That freebie win that would have been Leon Edwards versus Tyron Woodley. Because, we are all agreed Tyron Woodley is thoroughly shot and has been for a while. Could have changed everything. But honestly, what I'd rather see is do an interesting stylistic matchup like Usman versus Stephen Thompson. He wants to fight regularly. He's shown he fights regularly. Usman, this is. Stephen Thompson's getting to the end of a career. He's on a couple of win streak, I think, and he looks good in all his wins. Spare that similar situation against as Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz, where he got caught by Anthony Pettis. He's been great. So just do that fight because it's interesting, because the guy's got a 89% takedown defense rate and has amazing footwork and will ask some interesting questions of Usman. And in the meantime, do Colby Covington versus Leon Edwards, because then we either get Leon Edwards versus a wrestler, the answer, or we get Colby Covington versus someone who's not Tyron Woodley, the answer. In fact, we get the answer to both. But that makes too much damn sense. So what else was good on this card? I skimmed Maia versus Bilal Muhammad. Demian Maia versus competent wrestler. They said that this is Demian Maia's last fight afterwards. I think, it's a decent way to go out at 42, 43. Hugely influential fighter on the game. I think he's going to be influential after he's gone even. The passing style that he employed throughout his career, just incredible. And sort of remembered as, I saw it described as MMA's best one-dimensional fighter, and the person who said that seemed to mean it in a very sincere and respectful way. But the thing that people forget about Demian Maia is that he was a pretty competent striker. He was getting along well with his striking. He was training with Vanderlei Silva. They were good friends. And he got caught by Nate Marquardt kicking too much and got starched. And then he sort of carried on striking. But then at a certain point, he decided to just hone all his efforts on getting the takedown, pursuing the takedown, taking people down. And the striking dropped away, but he'd still surprised people. He'd lanced up Gunnar Nelson with left straights. Obviously boxed up Ben Askren on the feet, which is why we all knew that Ben Askren was going to lose that Jake Paul one. But yeah, underrated striker who took the decision to move away from the striking and to focus wholeheartedly on being one-dimensional. It's very rare that people round out their skill set and then go, actually, I don't need that, and have success. So really remarkable in that sort of way. Could definitely be a world-class coach and have his own team come out. Also has a journalism degree, I think. So could well be the next Ariel Helwani, but in Portuguese. But then also speaks better English than a lot of our reporters. Veteran of the sport, definitely worthy of some respect. And big ups to Demian Maia. Thanks for all the fights and for all the awesome submissions. Actually, this links in well with the Paul Craig versus Jamal Hill fight, which is what I wanted to talk about. But Demian Maia, early on in his MMA career, he ended up underneath a guy, had the overhook and a butterfly guard, and he swept him by the overhook, and the guy fought so hard to stay on top. While Demian Maia was just sort of chilling, doing this sweep, the guy fought so hard to stay on top, he separated his own shoulder and had to tap out to injury. And Demian Maia looked so upset about it. It's really unusual. I wasn't trying to break your arm that time. But this Paul Craig one versus Jamal Hill. I love Paul Craig. I really do. I said last week, imagine if he fought how he looked. But what he's been able to do with, glaring holes in his game and starting in the game pretty late is really remarkable. And his kicking's coming along. I really liked that he went straight out and front kicked Jamal Hill in the gut, but grabbed a hold of him, tried to drag him into guard. He did drag him into guard, in fact, into half guard with the overhook, which is please pass me, but was able to use a knee shield and actually start applying that mirror lock from the bottom, the overhook Americana, the arm crank, whatever you want to call it, but a really nasty shoulder lock. And it's famous for Frank Mir doing it to P.T. Williams from the closed guard, and then you open your guard, put your knee in front of the opponent as a shield to create space and arch your back and crank their arm really nastily. He almost got it from the half guard, went back, tried it again, and as he had the overhook from full guard, Jamal Hill stacked up into him, and he went from one arm to the other in an instant. I saw it once they slowed it down. I was like, oh, okay, it wasn't super beautiful transition, but real time, I didn't see that coming at all. It just went from one arm to the other out of nowhere, immediately starts cranking it, dislocates it at the elbow, and ends up hammer fisting him with a limp arm stuck inside a triangle choke. Unbelievable. The ref on this one was bad because the rule is like, yeah, people will get their arms broken and maybe it'll look like they've toughed it out, but they will have a broken arm and they'll continue. But this one was so obviously broken that almost every referee would have stopped it. Really shitty reffing. And Paul Craig was all class afterwards. I do wonder how many Americans can understand a word he's saying. Because I'm British and it's sort of 3 out of 4 for me. But yeah, what a fucking character. He's great fun to have around. And then the other one I wanted to talk about from this card was Jake Collier versus Carlos Felipe split decision. No, was obviously Brad Riddell versus Drew Dober. What a fucking banger. I think most people expected this to be a banger, but it was lived up to it and more. Drew Dober came out aggressive, rattled Riddell early, and then Riddell, even from the second exchange, it was Dober would lead, Riddell would slip and counter, and it was like 50-50 whether Dober would then slip and counter that. So it was just like the same leads over and over again, but both men getting the worst of it each time. It was fantastic. The wrestling was fun. And this crowd were absolute dog shit. I mean, yes, it was the most decisions of any UFC card ever, I think, or tied. And it was the longest ever because you had 3 fucking 5-rounders. Actually, no, one of them finished in the 3rd round, but you had 3 5-rounders booked. You had a load of decisions. You had like 2 finishes on the entire card. But these people were fucking booing anytime the 2 guys touched chests. It was ridiculous. But you saw, I always talk about with Riddell, he throws his right shoulder as if he's going to throw right straight, and then he throws a really round to the side, like not overhand, but around the side right swing. And it's, Joe Rogan's going, no telegraph at all. I'm like, well, yeah, there is, but it's almost like it's so round and people are expecting the straight punch that he catches dudes out with it. It's really remarkable punch. But these two are just taking lumps out of each other. Dober doing some nice left kicks and left kicks to left straights, Andy Hook style. If you watch one fight from this card, probably this one. Either this one or Moreno versus Figueiredo. It was fucking banging. And Brad Riddell's best and most convincing win to date. Because he's been a little bit like, I called him Kiwi Lando Venata because he has fun fights, but they're not very convincing wins. But this one, I was pretty convinced, and it was his best opponent yet. So other stuff that happened this weekend, Bellator had a ghastly main event with Amosov versus Lima. I mean, 2 guys who definitely could be in the UFC welterweight division in the middle of the mix, but it was Lima not doing enough and Amosov holding him down and being content with that. It was not fun. Lima just zero urgency at this point. He's basically Tyron Woodley. But Amosov, blanketing top player, just it could be a little bit more fun. I mean, it wasn't helped that Lima was good enough to get back to guard and then would apply a body triangle. And the refs aren't going to stand you up just for holding it, So he didn't help his case at all. And then Rizin, which I've only seen a little bit of, but the 2 notable fights for me were Roberto de Souza, Satoshi versus Tafik Musayev. Really remarkable because Tafik Musayev is a very, very strong wrestler. And Satoshi, like in the gi, he used to just dive at people's ankles from across the mat and like end up underneath them. But in this one, he came out, shot the takedown, got sprawled on, came out with the knee on the break, and then he shot a low single, really low, and stepped over it, caught it in like a half guard and started climbing up and shucking his way to the guy's back. And then as he was climbing onto Tafik Musayev's back, Tafik Musayev was able to turn back into him, but he fell into a triangle choke. It was really impressive. I saw someone claim that Roberto de Souza would probably be top 10 in the UFC lightweight division, and I was like, hold the fuck on. But I was very impressed, and I would really like to see him against some other big names. Unfortunately, those guys are the 2 big names at lightweight in Rizin. We're probably 1 title defense away from them getting Kawajiri out of retirement to fight whoever has the belt. But on the subject of Kawajiri, their co-main event was going to be Tenshin Nasukawa in 3 single-round boxing exhibitions. And they only announced 2 of the opponents, and they were like, and Mr. X? Like, what? You could trade it all in for what's in the mystery box. And I literally, on the AMA that the Rizin staff guy had on Reddit, I was like, what's the chance this Mr. X is Tatsuya Kawajiri? Because I picked a washed-up old Japanese MMA fighter. But I knew it wouldn't be him because he's a lightweight and Tenshin's like 125 pounds. But they picked Hideo Takoro, who Takoro is 43 years old and he was a grappler for his entire career. And he took Tenshin the distance in this one-round boxing exhibition. It's just fucking Rizin, the state of you. Why are you so shit? And then their main event was Kleber Koika Herbst versus Mikuru Asakura. Herbst awkwardly jumping guard constantly and finally catches him in a triangle. You know, all these triangles makes me think that we're not looking at like guys who could just come over to the UFC and win the belt, but rather they're fighting guys who can't grapple that well. But, you know, it was decent. I mean, it was good to see Herbst back in action. I haven't seen him in a while. Silly mistake from Asakura, who was pretty much piecing him up on the feet up till then. But otherwise, that was pretty much it for the weekend. I think we'll call it there for today. Got some fights happening next weekend. We've got Ige versus Korean Zombie, which should be great. And I'm going to be writing some stuff in the week too. So, yeah, lots going on. If you want to support the podcast, get in on Advanced Striking 2.0 series, all the other shit we're doing, and, you know, just be a boy, sign up to the Patreon. If you want to send an email to the podcast, jackslackpodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to see what I'm writing at any time, fightprimer.com. I am your boy, Jack Slack. Tenshin Nasukawa's war against homeless MMA fighters bless.